All right, last unit for graffiti, and we finally get to look at the piece. So this is the level that all graffiti artists are kind of striving for, and it's to do the final piece. Okay, so a graffiti piece is it's short form for masterpiece. So for by definition, for something to be considered a piece, has to have minimum 3 colors. So already the stuff that we've looked at, we have a fill and an outline, for example, with the blockbuster. So how do we get the 3 colors in there? And we're going to look at some of the things that we can do to make it a piece and get those at least 3 colors, if not more, in there. Okay, so normally pieces are done by more experienced writers. And that's because, as you see, kind of going from a tag to a throw up to a blockbuster, the letters are getting more and more complicated in terms of getting used to spray painting, getting used to your use of color, adding 3D, doing different types of fills. So it takes a lot to be able to control the spray can and be able to incorporate all of those things. Now, the letters are more complex and they're more original. So what we've seen for blockbusters and throw-ups, they tend to sort of all, be the same, kind of bubble letters and kind of block letters. So here, it's like your own style. So it incorporates 3D. You also have a fat line, or also called a glow line, around the letters, and we learned a little bit about that when we looked at the throw-ups. Inside the letters, you have colorful designs. In the background, you have designs. Respect comes from your style, and that takes a while to kind of develop. Now, with pieces, they can be vandalism, depending on where they're put, but also they can be considered art. So, in the 80s, there was a big influence kind of from the hip hop kind of movement, the 80s sort of style. And there's one local artist, his name's Scam, and he is in Toronto. And he sort of works in that sort of 80s sort of style. So in the 80s style, it's sort of like the letters are still readable. So as you can see with Scan's piece, the letters are pretty original and they're abstract, but they're readable. You can see what they said. And inside of the letters, if you look, there's things like circles and stars. The letters include things like arrows, extensions. There's stripes, there's bubbles inside the letters. 3D is added in them. And in all cases, we've learned of color schemes. So definite use of color schemes inside of the letters. And this is what's really important because spray paint's very expensive, and to go and do something really huge like this in a piece, you can't just go, wonder what color I'm gonna throw up now. You've got to have some sort of ideas about how you're going to use your color and how your colors go together. There's a fat line or a glow line all the way around the outside of your design, and that's because things get really complicated, and it's to unite everything together. And there's usually a lot of other stuff going on a wall. So that's to kind of unite your design and make it stand out from other designs. And then you put stuff in the background to kind of bring everything together. So wild style is another sort of piece that's a little bit different than Scam's work, for example. This is a piece by Toronto artist Bacon. So you can see it actually says Bacon in there. And it's something, there's not necessarily one way or a trick to read graffiti. It's just you get better and better at figuring out the letters. And the more you kind of do it yourself, the better you get at be able to read the letters. But wild style is something where the goal is to really abstract the letter. So you're taking the letter B, for example, and you're adding as much stuff as it is possible and squishing it and pulling it and stretching it and creating your letters that way. So sometimes the respect comes from, for wild style, how abstract you can get the letters. Okay, so in graffiti pieces, they can be readable, they can be kind of abstract, but when they get really abstract, the term is wild style. Okay, so there's no one right way to do graffiti letters. Your respect comes from your own original way of doing your own letters. So it's a lot of trial and error, it's a lot of work, and just taking risks and trying new things. Okay, so you can see just from these examples, there's huge differences in different way that graffiti artists do their letters. Respect comes from your use of color. So we're going to look later about how we're going to fill in our letters and what we're going to do with the background. But color scheme is important, how you put those colors together, not just filling everything in with one single color, but really using your colors well. So there's a lot to know. And where you place your artwork. Now, this is an image of Graffiti Alley in Toronto, which I really hoped that we would be able to go to this year, but it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do our final trip. But I am going to do a virtual trip, so don't worry. We still are going to do like a mini field trip. But Graffiti Alley is a legal graffiti alley. So quite often, you're going to see pieces there because it's a legal alley and because you have all the time in the world to take your time and to do your piece and not be interrupted and not worry about getting caught by the police. So yes, some of the top graffiti artists, you're going to see their work there because that's sort of the place to go. When graffiti writers travel to Toronto, they would probably go to Graffiti Alley and put up a piece there so it can be showcased there for the graffiti community. However, if you could pull off with the skill to do a piece in like illegally in a place where you're not supposed to do graffiti, then there's more respect because not only do you have the skill to do it, but you also have the guts to do it probably quite quickly and without getting caught. So people tend to see, the general public tend to see graffiti pieces more as art because they look at it and they can respect the talent and skill that goes into doing something like this. So, but it doesn't always mean just because they see it as art, it's still vandalism if it's in a place that is illegal. So if you're doing it without permission, it's illegal. There was a time when Graffiti Alley, it was illegal to paint there. I mean, it just, writers kept painting and painting and painting and working there. And many of them got arrested for working there. But then it became more and more popular. It became a tourist attraction. It brings a lot of business and tourists to that area. So then it became a legal place, but it wasn't always that way. So this is what's really frustrating, and we'll talk more about that later, for some of these graffiti writers that have got arrested for actually painting there, and now they give tours to schools like us, right, to go. So some of the respect does come from placement. Okay. So another work by Scam that's in Graffiti Alley. So just to review, for a piece, you have designs in the background. You have 3D added to really complicated, not necessarily complicated, but added to your original letters. Your original letters have design elements added to them, and we'll get more into that, like arrows and serifs and things like that. Inside of your letters, the fill, there's designs inside of them. There's a fat line around the outside of your whole design, and so you can see in Scam's work, he's got a red fat line or glow line, it's called, all around the outside of it to kind of unite all of the letters, and minimum 3 colors. So, but you can see in Scam's work, there's layers of colors, not just in the letters themselves and the designs of the letters. Even in his 3D, they're just not a solid 3D, but there's a bunch of designs and stuff in the 3D, and there's different designs around in the background. So that's where you get the colors. Okay, so that is an introduction to what a graffiti piece is. So you do a super easy quiz next. It's 5 questions. You have 2 chances to do it. So if you want, you can review this video or the PowerPoint for you. Okay, so next, after your quiz, we're going to learn how to actually make our own piece, and that's the fun part. Okay, see you in a bit.